Thanks, Poppy. I paused it already and was like, oh, I'll definitely not remember to hit play. So thank you for reminding me twice. There are some logistics going on that I didn't see coming. So, okay. Yes, I just said welcome to SEP. Welcome to the IxDA Indy event. My name is Chelsea Christian. I'm a senior interaction designer here at SEP. I am going to be talking to you a little bit about just some of my takeaways from 24 Hours of UX conference that happened this summer. It's an all remote conference, and I'm going to be highlighting one of the keynotes, and then hopefully we can grab some of those ideas and talk about more local things. And then I hope you're willing and able to join in on the conversation. I probably will prime us with some questions, and then it's not very prescriptive, but I'm sitting to encourage the casualness of this event. So great. Poppy or Evan, is there anything else you would like to add as our intro?
I don't think so.
Okay. I'll go ahead and get started. Sure, how else to, okay, cool. So you're not looking at all the participants. Okay, so this, that is that gonna remain? I don't know. That little pop-up might remain, we don't know. Okay, so this is a provocative title. So you're like, riff off of the 7 deadly sins. So I thought that was interesting. And I think it, as a keynote, they're one of the longer, well, they're all, so there are 24 talks and they're all an hour, but the keynotes try to take in something that's like a more rich topic and not something so granular. So that's kind of what I took away from this conference. And then John Bowie is the, I guess, like author of this talk. So I'm going to be talking from what he presented to us. So this happened June 8th, on June 8th. And then also there's going to be a moment where I'm going to draw. Oh man, this is like so funny because we only have 2 books, but they're so, I wish I just had a book for each of you here. At some point I'll draw from the, I might even have Kemper, since you're right there, if you would draw from the raffle to give 2 of these books with us to give 2 of you. And it is actually going to be in the next slide. So we'll be talking about, so the content of his book, Navigating the Politics of UX, is kind of what led to the themes of the talk. There's a little bit of like diverging from the book in the talk. So I'll try to hit those points, but there's more depth and examples and nuance in the book. So those lucky winners can continue learning. A little bit about the book is going to be in the presentation. So these are just the notes that come from why John wrote this. So the working relationships between functional teams and how it's very political. There's also, so this first one is going into the volume 1, and man, you all just cannot see that for some reason. I don't know. There's something on our screen here that's really annoying, and I'm not sure how to make it go away. Okay, in this corner of the book, there's like a small definition of, in volume 1, he's going to speak about people primarily, and then in 2 and 3, he's diving into politics a little bit more. And then there's another one that I think don't want to guess wrong, but there's a third one too that has the context of the book. So let's dive into what are these 7 things, because when we talk about a title with a number, you kind of want to know right away, like what's the index. So your products have users is a myth, according to John. People read manuals and remember training. Your product's features are used. Your product is inherently complex. UX is a separate process owned by a separate team. Feature parity is a winning product strategy. And the last one, you design products, is a myth, apparently. So some of these are maybe more arguable than others. So let's dive in. And that was my thought on that one. Does anyone watch Schitt's Creek here? Oh no, this might have been beyond the crowd. That's really sad. Chris, have you seen this?
I have not.
Oh, okay. Well, if you get a chance, you should watch Schitt's Creek on Netflix. This is one of the more like highlighted characters. Yes, you get the great, because it's like, wait, that's a myth. That what? How can you just say that is a myth? And we'll go deeper into this. Okay, so John has had. Okay, so this talk is an hour long, but mine is not. I'm going to go through this briefly, and then we'll probably stop around, let's say, I want to stop before like 6, I'm going to aim around 6:20, keep this next 15, yeah, I don't know, about 15 more minutes or so. Then we'll stop and have some talks about what this content is. But John goes into like his timeline at first, which is really long, and he's had a lot of jobs at a lot of places. Right now, he's a principal scientist at Colorado Design Labs. But the premise is that because of all these jobs, he's seen a lot of different styles of communication and collaboration with people, technology, and then with people amongst themselves. So he's experienced UX professionally in these many different sizes of companies. He's really big in helping people succeed in their career in UX. So that's part of why he wrote People in his volume 1, and then wrote about people first before the other political parts. And then, yeah, essentially this is kind of a vague explanation of breadth, right? So he's experienced a lot of different types of workplaces. So something I wanted to highlight, because I thought this was really important. He wasn't trying to share ideas in this talk that we would find new. He was trying to help us with certain touch points to help us influence and inspire. So if we can have good examples in our pockets for how to talk about design, to development and leadership, it might help us with the political piece of designing. So I'm mostly going to be stating kind of my opinions of what I've learned. I'm happy to have a discussion where you disagree with me. That's welcome. This part was a key for me, so I pulled it out because I thought it was helpful for context. Okay. Oh yes, so there's going to be some gifts around. I like to pull those in when I can. Okay, so if a myth is that your products have users, here's kind of explaining why, and then the like template here is that I'll tell you how he explains a way to dispel the myth. Chris, just because I'm still really bothered by okay, it's just going to cut off some of the presentation, and I just don't.
I'll keep trying.
Oh, yeah.
Do you only do that on these and not your computer?
I don't see it on my computer. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll read it in case we cut things off. So The blood, sweat, and tears shed baby your passionate makers see as your product is likely a tool. So or something that is just a piece of somebody's actual life. And there's a lot of other things going on. And he wanted to like change the script to be more like people have your products. Our products don't like own our people in the world. So it's more of, most of these are like mindset shifts. So something that might just work or solve a problem that then gets forgotten about could actually be an achievement for good design. And it's a little bit counterintuitive. This might only way to measure success. The for dispelling could be encouraging every person in the organization to participate in research. So people really understand struggles and pain points. Really at the point here is like heightening. Oh, my audio. Okay, I will try to speak up, but I don't know if I can change anything about that. So the dispelling myth was focus on the people. If you can highlight pains and your company knows about the pains, it might help them. And then using personas as a political tool. And then John goes into why he hates personas in general, but in some cases, it's nice to help people connect to someone that they don't know anymore. Like, we might be able to help people meet someone like who they're solving the problem for if we use personas, if they cannot go meet them themselves. Ideally, we have people meet people, but there are sometimes limitations. So another hint was, let's try to call these people some sort of litigation strategy. The other one that's got there says just music lover. So not saying user all the time and describing the people can also start to help an organizational shift. Here is an example of how it takes a lot of different places and to dig in deeper and deeper to find something. And his point was, what we really want is for people to forget that they're using the thing we made and they're focusing on what they want to be there and do, which is what we promised them. Quote, it says, and I knew exactly what to do, but in a much more real sense, I had no idea what to do. So the second myth is people read manuals and remember training. When we have to have other reading materials in order for people to get by, we have failed, according to John. When we turn people away from focusing on the thing we're building, that sort of defeats the purpose of what we are building, because we are building something that should hopefully be streamlined for its use case. So if there's now a like separate or alternative thought in order to calculate or decipher or translate something, we might have not done or like met some of the basic needs of the user. Some of the dispelling, and this one is maybe not as arguable because a lot of people know this now, that people are not reading, and there's reasons for that, but I'm not going to go there right now. to fight back on this. And sharing things with people when they need to learn it instead of upfront or to the side even. Okay, so this was a old example of how there were certain like light patterns that had meaning on this printer. And then he was saying that essentially let's eliminate complexity when we can, because there's a lot of stuff that can't be eliminated.
I do get references to
Okay,
enchiladas.
perfect. Yes, which is okay. It's just, you can probably understand her affect, so that's good. So the myth is your product's features are used. If we're focusing on testing our features, so making sure that what we've put in works, not that we shouldn't do that, but if we are not learning more about what people need to achieve, so aside from our design, aside from our screens and our workspaces, if we do a little more of that, we might be able to make the right choices to reduce chaos on the screen. Our job is to bring the result as close as possible to the person, so that we're not asking them to take an intelligence test, because that's not what we're there to do. The dispelling myth here is when we don't create the right feature for the solution, or we have to throw something away, or there is a feature idea that comes up much later because of all the experiences we learned about. It's okay. Learning from failure is okay. And we need to say this more to people in development and in our leadership. That's how we're going to get this right, by failing on what is not supposed to be there, is John's point. So I'm having like pop-ups block my screen too. So this says, so what if they don't feel like looking for the information we provide somewhere? The idea here is if we have all this stuff hidden, but it's there just for maybe even heading towards minimalism, that might not be the best answer, because there's more thinking they need to do to achieve what they're there to do. And there's a lot of like reasons why we may hide things. So this can probably be argued, but this was a generalization he made. Okay, so this myth is your product is inherently complex. This first one is a direct quote. So your technology isn't complex, your product is just immature. In response to product consulting in rocket science, the rocket scientists he talked to said that they don't have time to learn new technologies and that tech should be getting easier to use. So our desire to maybe like give all of the different possible like control that could be might not be the right choice. And if we can scale in flexibility instead of focus only on power users first, that might actually help us design better, according to him. And then if we're not planning for learning curves in the beginning, people can achieve what they're there to do without the learning curve. For example, Figma using the same keyboard shortcuts from Sketch was a good idea. Why reinvent the wheel? According to that, like this myth in this example. So dispelling might look like, his advice was asking the problem as if you were asking Alexa or like a smart home device what to do. As in, you're trying to get them to find exactly what they need in their end result instead of understanding how it works. So they don't need to necessarily learn why this complicated thing has been made simple for them unless they're like there to do that for some explicit reason. Do people know the Hidden Figures reference from this movie? That's who these people, these are rocket scientists, and that movie is awesome. So that's why they're there. So we learn in the maturity of our products that complexity won't outlast ease. He went into this in some depth, but as products mature, the trend is they get easier to use, not more complex. All right, myth number 5. This one's Parks and Rec. Do you all recognize that? Okay. So UX is a separate process owned by a separate team. This one is a more hot topic right now, I think. So this one might not be as hard to agree with. So customer experience, marketing, sales, content makers, this list and much more overlaps with what John calls UX issues. That his point is that a lot of people are thinking about what we're thinking about. So if we can focus on breaking silos and trying to be corporate immune system busters, that was something he said, that might help us with connection making and morale boosting. So that's like something not just about product, but then it might actually help our product move forward and not just move forward while taking 2 steps back. This was a just kind of interesting way around his point. And then the dispelling might be to understand people in the company deeper, might help us to influence and inspire better, which is common sense and still useful. This also means transparency and possibly educating as we go. So it's not, here is an entire playbook of how to do this entire design process and more, I'm doing this step, section C right now, come with me and we should do this together and I can facilitate something that is more bite-sized. So we are all in this picture showing up in some way. Let's focus on the overlaps. This was the customer experience lifestyle really simplified. This also had some more animation, which I'm not able to like conjure here, but some of these like big words of what is happening and essentially there's like movement around the triangle and in this what is that, pentagon? So am I saying that right? I think so. So essentially the point being, let's try to find commonality and work together instead of keeping design in our corner in a locked up. Okay, so this one that's Tracy Turnblad from Hairspray the musical. This is a more recent one they did on ABC Live. So essentially she is trying to show a new way of dancing in the 60s. So that's the reference. So feature parity is a winning product strategy. Essentially sameness is not necessarily going to be a good approach for strategy when we evolve products. So we can over-engineer current features that we love so much and make them not better. And then that can cause frustration. We can focus more on, so if we can keep testing continuously by showing iterations of prototypes, and this is an entire, research is a whole another ball game, right? Like it's much bigger than this one bullet point. But essentially those key metrics and those key metrics that are being tested through our research, if we can keep coming back to them, we might be able to actually calculate change. And those are things, those change calculations and satisfaction yield are things that our leadership might be more interested in hearing. So dispelling this might look like, these are pretty obvious things, focusing on visual design and emphasis, findability, navigation, and learner engagement as your main categories for key metrics. The point here is continue to research so that you know how your product should evolve. That is easier said than done, of course. I loved this picture. I thought that was compelling. So if we try to anticipate all changes to features needed in the beginning of the process, it can produce an inconsistent design and poor user experience. So if we try to put together what seems to fit in the beginning, our picture actually won't be necessarily desirable. Good illustration there. Okay. This is from Bridesmaids. Maybe you've seen that movie, maybe not. That's okay. Have you seen it? Okay, so in this scene, they're trying to get the officer's attention by pretending like this is one of many attempts to try to get the officer's attention, and they both try to pretend like they're not in the car. So, and it's hilarious because it's Kristen Wiig. So SNL shout out. So the seventh myth, the one that's like pretty provocative, is that it's a myth that you design products. His point is that you do more than that. There's a lot of variables that you can't control, and a lot of times people will do different things with your product than you intend. So there's a wild component you cannot really design for. So if we can automate what we can for key triggers so that we can allow for reversal or undo. So think of like heuristic principles where if somebody is stuck in an error, they're able to get out of it. We can back them out. That might be more optimal. So yes, they might do something we did not intend, but let's let them undo that. So this is a streamlined kind of behavior. And then dispelling it is make it hard to fail. So there's ways to recover, there's ways to find archives, helping people build confidence in the product so that the robust factors of the product is that they can not fail might be a good goal. So yes, this one was talked about for like a minute and a half maybe, which was so funny because it was so provocative to say that it's a myth that you design products. And then he kind of ran out of time, which is fair because that happens. So anyway, that's what I took away from it. The like picture one is essentially what's happening in this example is that we were asking somebody to do the like figure out the functions or like do the math essentially instead of doing some of that in the system, so we can reduce making people do math, for example. So when I said earlier, we're not giving them an intelligence test, here's another kind of like backing of that. In our testing protocols, we often say this, we're not here to test you. We're here to test the system. So let's mean that. Yeah, so these are some cool nuggets, I thought. And now we're going to talk about, I have just a few questions, but first, can we do the raffle? Yeah, so Kimber is just going to pull 2 names and we're going to give away John's book. No pressure.
We got Aaron Noble.
Yep.
Okay, and one more.
Congratulations.
Cool. Kimber, do you want to say anything about the book you recently purchased?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really worth the read. There's so much there. It is, like she said, it's broken down kind of, it gives you tips kind of to dive into office politics. It breaks into the dispelling the myths, and it even kind of helps give you tips to sell it to your executive leadership team to kind of define it. And it references so many other great books that we've all talked about. It's really handy. I've like annotated mine because there's like just too much to memorize that I plan on going back to it.
Thank you for being here in person. So I have a few questions that we can just talk about from the table. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. The questions are also on the slides, but I think in order to figure out the video stuff, I'm going to, okay, so gonna do that and try to pull into our table a little bit. Cool. So, okay, I think we can have. I originally planned for us to have more like table time amongst yourselves, but it doesn't really make sense to do that because you're about a group size anyway. So we can just talk about that stuff out loud. As far as online participants, I think what I can do is we will have a discussion from the questions, and if you have something to say, put it in the chat. Do you have a different idea for that, Poppy or Evan?
No, I mean, well, like another idea would be that we have an online conversation amongst ourselves, but then it'd require you to like mute and all that stuff. But
Oh,
I think we could just chime in if we wanted.
I think we could do a breakout room for people on Zoom and then come back together. So let me, if I can do it quickly.
You could also pull the questions up or like pose the first question and the table could start, they could start discussing while you do that.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I just can't not do both at the same time. So I think I can just do, let participants choose a room. It'll be there. It's open for you if you choose to go there. And I'm just gonna stop thinking about that now. And then as far as our questions. So I'd like to be able to share. Oh, I can do.
It's very quiet in here.
Gallery.
Gallery, here's what you're wanting.
I think so, but then, so what I was trying to do was be able to see this. I just wanted to be able to see.
I mean, could you just read the first question, Chelsea?
Yeah. Okay. The first question is, what is your favorite myth and why? And I wanted to show you the list of myths.
I was about to ask if you could do that.
Yes. I'll just go back to here and,
Shall we discuss now?
yes, go for it. What do y'all think?
I'm happy to start. Yeah, that's my favorite is your products have users. Is that what you're
That's
saying?
the first one, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I really like that one and just flipping the script of your users have products. So I think it does kind of describe the, so product centricity, I suppose, when we're working to solve problems around the product. So I think it's just a reminder to be user-centered, really, and it's not about the product so much, but you know, when you're immersed in testing the product and prototyping and all of that, it's coming back to the fact that, like, if you contextualize what the product is for in the life of a human, it's probably a very small part of their life. So depending on what it is, if it's something that they, well, I'd say there may be some exceptions, like if you're a designer and you rely on Adobe Illustrator to create vector illustrations, that's a big part of their life, but it's not their whole life.
He actually talks similar about that. I think it's reads the book because a lot of it is about the results. But he was talking about even writing this book, that he's a writer, but for a moment he had to become a user of Microsoft Word. He's not trying to be a user of the product, he's trying to be a writer. Or you're not trying to be an Illustrator expert, you're trying to be an artist, you're trying to design the product you are. And so it's kind of about thinking about the behaviors or the results that they want, not necessarily the product.
Well, and I would say where there might be some overlap there too, there's a long time Adobe Creative Suite user, is that sometimes people do start to identify with the products they use. And so like when I went to Adobe Max years ago, I was with my people. Like it was like, where y'all been all my life? And we all had our merch and we were so stoked. It really was like going to church. And so I think sometimes there is this like nuanced, or maybe even not so nuanced overlap of like, that's right, I use Adobe Illustrator, or that's right, I use Figma, and now Adobe's purchased Figma. Now worlds are converging, religions are coming together.
Right? Actually, that mindset leads into the complexity, right? So we became like, I know Photoshop because I had to spend so much time learning the program to become a master of it, right? Where Procreate, it's so intuitive to use that we do get that mindset that like, there has to be that complexity, because that means I have intelligence, that means I'm better, that means I have skill, right? And it doesn't necessarily need to be that way, but there is that mentality we get for being like, only I know how to do this, and now you can't do it, but that's gatekeeping in a way, right?
You're nodding over here, so I'm
Yeah.
curious.
Well, I was gonna say that, yeah, your product is inherently complex. That was one of my favorites. The reason why is I think just as designers or developers, art owners, we want to make something complex. We want to make something that's different, maybe better than our competitors or whatnot. But we, in doing so, we get that it should be easier. We are building year after year, iterating through new design, new ideas, new technology, and it should be easier. We should be making the product easier. If we're trying to add more features or adding, just that was just the one that came to us. So, yeah.
I think some people use complexity as an excuse for bad usability.
Yeah.
It's like, well, our product's complex. So they just hand it away like, well, doesn't matter. I mean, there is certain inherent complexity in any product. It has to do a certain amount of stuff. You're not gonna be able to simplify beyond that, but still.
Well, a lot of like the Internet of Things boom didn't give, so like a lot of those pieces that made that possible were around much sooner, but until there was enough like ease with Bluetooth, it wasn't mainstream. So like it was maybe possible to get your things more connected much earlier, but until we hit those like hurdles that like made things quicker, smaller, a little bit easier for the common person to set up, it wasn't even gonna be possible to like be in homes. So thinking about like, it's actually not about just what's possible. It's like, what can that combine with the reality of ease and like the common person's ability to do it quickly. Like it, I think that's just so much of like the part of innovation we can't measure as far as knowing when it's time for it, because we don't know like when is the cusp of usability not like too big of a jump, or like the barrier to entry is not too high is what I'm trying to say. And you just can't always predict that.
Well, that makes me think so much about QR
I was
codes.
just gonna say,
Go ahead, you take it.
Yeah, natively, it was just a small switch. I mean, everyone had to download a QR reader, and it was just a simple, natively all have cameras. It was just let's look at it, and everyone else had to use it. But I mean, QR codes have been around for a while. so-
Right.
And then to jump off of that, pandemic rolls around, people are ordering at restaurants. And now it's like people have a real need
Yeah.
because they don't have paper menus anymore or laminated menus. So then people became more comfortable as it became easier to use. And now
Perfect
everyone's,
timing.
now you go into restaurants like, where's my, oh, there's no menus, like this QR code.
Yeah.
Before, like you had to download like separate apps to get them to work.
Yes.
Once, Apple kind of, to put it into their technology. where you
Or
can-
even texting, you had to go A, B, C, D, E, next.
Yeah.
A, B, C, you had to go
Yeah.
each letter, each time to get the next letter with
Oh my
phones and
goodness.
devices.
I want to go back to that
Very
actually.
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Too easy.
mind that.
I know I still have a hard time typing
Right.
on my keyboard. I hit I, it's O or U.
I
Oh my
turned on
gosh.
autocorrect.
I have, I have two, but I still like, I think I hit I, but like it will hit I or O or U because they're right next to it. So that's my biggest one. I'm like,
Like tapping bunch to like swiping the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the drag. So what I don't know is if people from the other room want to speak. Yeah, I think so, and they're not yet. So, but I do, let's look at, well, the next question is. That's gonna go through the, no, we're not doing that. I'll do it this way. So what kind of political challenges are you facing in your work?
What is politics? How do you define politics? Presenter.
Nice. Hey, I'm just a messenger for John right now.
How would John define politics?
Yeah, so kind of the tie-in, obviously, maybe not obviously. So the book he wrote, the being the politics of UX, is that politics of UX? The discussion for the politics of UX is this myth stuff. So like his points are that everything we're grappling with in these 7 myths is a political thing because it's like the inner workings of people and what people do and don't say and maybe can't and can say and like that part. So I think it's the context of people and what is maybe more acceptable or not, that like I think that's where he's going with political challenges. I was curious just what you all, well, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I know that kind of what I got from this is that it's UX is everybody's job, right? It's not just our department. Everybody's doing UX. And I've read more than other books that leads into it, but it's like pricing, it's onboarding, it's the entire user experience. So we can't do this on our own. So how do we get marketing? How do we get sales? How do we get QA? How do we get all the departments to align with us to be focused on the user and build better products in that way? So I know it's really relevant with what I'm doing and kind of working with a company that doesn't have UX maturity. So how do I get allies? How do I get analytics to give me the data so I can create stories? How do I get marketing to back me? And how do I get product managers to support me in everything, right? Or how do we get, the biggest thing is as designers, we can do the research all we want, right? And we can design a wonderful prototype, but if the developers don't care, they're just going to build it. How do we get them to learn that the user's failure is their failure? It's everybody's job. So it is, I think, really relevant. Just there's so many different aspects, and wherever you're at in your company's like maturity, there's always gotta get help.
Convincing and influencing. is like the words that are coming to my mind as far as what does politics mean in this conversation.
I have a definition.
Go for it. Okay.
I think this is what it was trying to remember the quote, but decision-making in a social context.
Love it.
So human factors for decision-making.
That's so good. That's very good.
I'm glad we're talking about this because I haven't, I'm transitioning into UX.
Awesome.
And so I always want to know what's the real. I feel like this conversation is the real on what can happen when you really get hired on.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm glad we're having this, so I'm not blindsided, like, oh, that's what we're talking about. It's happening. So like, I'm gonna be able to identify it. So is this a common thing that everyone has experienced personally, is having to show proof that what you're coming up with and your solutions is the answer, and they're saying, oh. Was that like-
Yes, every time.
I would even say though, it's almost like convincing around the process of helping them develop solutions in a sense,
Okay.
right? And so like convincing them of sort of like you're the facilitator, you are there to facilitate the discovery of problems and help to facilitate the discovery of solutions and getting that co-ownership in developing those insights that feed into the solutions, depending on the kind of engagement, right? And so part of the lift here that we're talking about is getting the buy-in in the first place in the process, the methodology, the validating the research and helping them to understand like this is all very useful. Channeling then there, so say you have a website's a great example of this because all websites are controversial in companies, right? And you have these competing interests. And so marketing has this landing page that they need, and sales needs this lead generation tool, whatever it is, and it's a process of like, as you get the discovery of what the user's needs are, it's helping them to then see the problems through the user and getting that alignment. So then the competing interests are like, hey, I still have these needs, but let me look at it through the user perspective and using that process of discovery to get that alignment, right? And get them to see kind of like, oh, okay, I have this need, but it's affecting the user this way. So maybe we need to re-examine that. And that's just one small example of a lot of different examples, but I guess in summary, it's getting buy-in into the process and then building trust among the team so that they can align around the human's need to use whatever it is that is being developed or whatever.
Yeah, so we have to deal with issues of like, you hired me to do this, so let me do my job.
And trust me,
I feel like
and I'm
there's gonna-
sorry that
And
you
trust
have to
me.
fight like that, because it shouldn't be that way, but it is that way. Yeah. Yeah. Are you saying you've experienced saying essentially, let me do my job?
I've done it in different.
In
Yes.
other contexts?
Yeah, in other contexts. I'm like, okay, I just wanted
Yeah.
to just hear it from a
You're
UX.
saying you're hearing that when we're
But so
discussing.
you're hearing-
Yeah.
I'm hearing that, so when I do experience, it's not gonna be a slap in the face, it's more like, okay.
And it really depends where you go, how design matures the organization. And that's another entire conversation. We should write that as an idea for a event to talk about design maturity.
Yeah, that's a good
I
topic.
think that's interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to just stop all of that. What were you
Oh, I was
something?
gonna
Yeah.
say, no, like, that's the thing too, though, and I mean, since the design maturity, it's, in design is subjective, right? So if we aren't basing our decisions in data and trying to change behaviors or having measurable incomes, it really just becomes, I think that looks better, or I like this, or that color is pretty, or, and then someone else is like, no, I think this is better, and then what does it even matter? It's just a really
Yeah.
irrelevant fight of whoever has the most control, and you're not making decisions based on any community data, and that's really about making sure that we're looking to the data, and our data is for the benefit of the user.
Mhm. I think that's also where heuristics come into play as well, because you can really leverage these rules like through whether they're graphic design, like the Gestalt principles, or just usability heuristics and principles themselves, but you can use this to back your argument. A lot of times, like, it is kind of like you're a lawyer defending your design decision. I think.
Sometimes I feel like the definition of design might not be the same between like different individuals, which may cause that issue of like, oh no, we can't do this because of this, because they have one mindset of design, which you may be thinking of differently. So I think that's something that can cause like political bumps.
Well, my favorite is, what does UX mean to you? And it's like, what is that? But like, you know what I mean? When I ask that question, it's a real thing, right?
Yeah. For sure. That reminds me of the part where it's all of the people and it's like they're all dealing with UX issues and it's just labeled differently, which made me think about something. I can't remember who it was in response to, but you all were talking about like essentially being convincing or like making sure we can validate and then share our research, right? Share our findings, share what we learn. And then the other like huge part of this mountain to climb is in communication, what words are we using? And do the people listening understand what we mean? Are we using like our buzzwords and they don't actually comprehend that it's like depth? And is it also just like something that needs to be stripped down and defined? A lot of times I find we're in a room, I'm with developers and product people. I primarily focus in interaction design. So I'm in that like beginnings where it's very nebulous and we're all in like, how do we get this first like low fidelity prototype where like the first workflows are making sense? That's like where I play a lot. And people are like saying a lot of different things. And then we're drawing them on the board and everyone's like, yeah. And then we're like, wait, we just all described this in totally different ways. And it's all right a little bit, but like, here's how we get clarity when we start to like come together and forge these words to mean something that we can point to and say, this is what I mean instead of this. And I just think a lot of times language gets in our way.
Of course, that can all vary too, because you do your interaction design, right?
Yeah.
And I'm UX research, and there's even layers of like involvement, right, in the process too.
Yeah.
So you're more on like actually crafting the solution, whereas I'm more doing the discovery. So I'm just mentioning that because I think when I was sharing earlier, it's like, well, from my viewpoint, it's helping to facilitate the process to get to a solution, but then that's like, then it's kind of like handing off to the people who are more crafting the solution. So there's layers and timelines and roles and all that too. So
yes. Let's see. So the essence, what kind of political challenges are you facing? Does anyone else have an example of areas where it's difficult to influence or to encourage other designers or other roles in your companies or contexts?
Like road mapping.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conflict there. Example, like someone gives you a reason, oh, we can't do that because it's not part of the roadmap, but it may be part of that, that necessary process. That's something that comes to mind.
Sure.
Roadmap.
Yep. When you say that, where in the process is that? Are you referring to like the very beginnings?
Yeah, like the beginning before really anything has really started.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, so we can keep talking on, either we can go to another myth. The last question just to think about is where can we start to like head towards simplicity, which is a lot of where his points kind of hint, but I don't know that he always says like, we're aiming for simplicity. But that's what I was kind of getting. So yeah, feel free to answer any more of these, whatever comes to mind.
What is simplicity? How do I know when I have found simplicity?
I don't have an answer for you, but something that's kind of parallel, I think, is it's a little counterintuitive in that you typically get there by going complex first, not simple first, because we're kind of bad at doing that.
Yeah, that's a stripping away process. right?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember exactly what I referenced. I know he kind of leaned heavily on like lean UX
Yeah.
in his book as well. And so it kind of makes me just think like he's kind of referring to like kind of that idea, the lean UX and kind of cutting the waste and doing the research up front, right? Like you said, the road mapping, like coming together, asking them important questions, taking that time. So yeah, like you mean, I guess it's kind of complex, right? Like you start with all of that, but that way you make sure that you're not designing it wrong, designing for the wrong problem for the wrong people, or it's just completely unorganized, right? So, but I think that's kind of where he's going with that. I can't think of anything else that was referenced.
But yeah, that makes sense.
I had a conversation about this, argument conversation, whatever you want to call it. It's more about coding, but a lot of the same concepts apply. What is complexity versus what is simplicity?
Yeah.
And so what we kind of came to a conclusion on was it's really about your brain, the cognitive load of using a product, software, whatever. How much do you need to think in order to use it? How much do you need to remember? If you have 5 modules in an application and each one works in a completely different way, that is 5 times the things you need to remember. If they all have the same UI, they have the same colors, the same error messages, that's a lot less to remember overall. There's not a definition of complexity, but that's one of the more elegant ways I've come to think about it,
Sure.
is how hard do you need to think
Yep.
to use a product?
Like that. I'm trying to remember who wrote the laws of simplicity. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
How do you say the last name?
I don't know if I said that right. I have no idea.
Because that's where I paused as well in my head. I
Starts
read
with
this book. It's like Maeda. I think
Yeah.
Maeda,
I don't know how to.
but I could be mixing that with another. So let's look. I would recommend this book. That's why I'm bringing it up. Which one? Laws of Simplicity. Yeah. Maeda. Let me see if I can.
Pretty sure it's Mata.
I think of Celia.
Mata, according to Poppy. Yeah, yes.
He also was a keynote at Interaction 2018.
Nice. Do you remember?
Which is a,
Simplicity?
he kind of talked about, it was more meta about how the main thing I remember is he was talking about thinker doers and talker doers and talker talkers, and how as makers and doers we need to be more talkers, and we need to talk about making and talk about why we're making what we're making. I know that was like amazing that I would have just said, but his talk was really good.
Also,
We
I
could
feel
probably
like,
dig it
is
up.
that Poppy talk?
Yeah.
I feel like she's like God.
Yeah. She is.
Like,
Yeah.
anyone
Anyone,
has spoken.
anyone speaking from Zoom comes from the sky. It's literally those speakers. So, yeah. That's
That's pretty good.
I think there's also like, what else is like the laws of reduction. So it's about kind of like, that's kind of how you get to simplicity is by just continually reducing and asking, you know, why? And you kind of have to ask why, you know, 10, 20 times before you finally get there. So it's this like really continuous process of reducing what we need, not really adding. So that's the thing that I like about, you know, this book.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've heard of the 5 whys, but not the 10 or 20.
Well, that's just, I have to ask it that why that many times
Yeah.
to just get to,
Yeah.
the po- you know, get to the point. So,
That's a good reminder. Maybe don't stop at 5 whys.
yeah, go ask 10 times.
Yeah.
Until you find.
Yeah.
You know, I think
Yeah.
that's the goal.
That's great.
That makes me think a lot about like UX writing and choosing the right labels and words for content. I think that's an area where most products could benefit from simplicity. And it's hard. And people have jobs that is someone's entire job to get like to be a like UX content strategist or writer, depending on like the product and the business, but it's a really important job.
My favorite is when marketing gets involved and then it's not UX writing and then.
It's like different to be a copy editor or
Is it?
a
Yeah,
copywriter. They have different goals. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's really good. Anything else from our Zoom up above?
You're ready to talk now.
Nope.
Poppy, what's your favorite myth?
My favorite myth?
Favorite.
Oh goodness. I mean, the one that stuck out to me most was the first one. That your product doesn't have users. Yeah, I think it's a really good reminder because everyone in product tends to be myopic and in thinking that, you know, what they work on matters the most. And that's great to get things done to a point. But I really appreciated the whole discussion and this event. Thanks for setting it up, Chelsea, and doing the work to distill the myths.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that talk was good that I listened to, but I do think it could have been given in less than an hour. So I'm glad that I was able to share it without like giving pre-event homework, because that's just hard sometimes. But thanks for coming. Yeah.
Solved around all of this.
I'm glad thank you for like adapting and pivoting with me as we went. So that was fun. I did not want to forget really quickly, Richard Armada on Zoom said, among some product owners, design is seen as a threat rather than a partner. And that was just that was the only like chat addition that I wanted to share and not miss. But yeah, interesting point.
That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, just I working with it was just one you know, situation. We just on a team and I was talking about technical debt, you know, how you know, technical debt's not obviously good for everyone involved. And yeah, there was a comment of well, you know, if we get all this done and we figure out all this, you know, work before development, you know, wouldn't that mean that we have less hours as developers because the solution's already made and we want to, you know, keep going on, iterating through, you know, sprints. But yeah, it was just like, you know, it's a good thing to obviously go through design thinking, design, but I felt from the developer side, it felt threatened because you know, we were solving a lot of problems, usability and prototyping
Sure.
and testing, versus just developing or building it, and being like, okay, well, we'll figure this out after it's built. And it's like, well, you know, it costs twice or 4 times as much to
Yeah.
do it. You know, it's a lot easier to build back a bunch of Post-it notes or wireframes or erase, you know, whiteboard versus, you know,
Sure.
switching codes and files and all that. So, but yeah, that was a common threat, or I felt like he felt threatened because, you know, the design team was there from a, you know, standpoint. I was like, well, it's as a whole, as the product, it's good, but that was the first time I experienced that personally.
How did you know, or how did you overcome it, or did you?
I don't think I did. I think I just figured out what it was, and I just felt like maybe he wasn't the best on the team. We were all, you know, it was all a contract work, so you know, it was a contracted project, and yeah, I just kind of took it out. I don't think everybody saw anything. I was just like, maybe he's not the best. He's not there for the best interest of the product. He's more so looking for maybe hours on the project for himself, where he thought I was cutting his hours because I was like, well, we could just do this here and save the project, you know, and the budget. I just simply testing it versus developing it. So.
I mean, there are things that we are talking about into that, but like, again, that's just like recruiting allies and getting them to be on your side and talk about like credit share. Because I think sometimes like, you know, we get to solve the problems that developers are creative and they want to solve problems too. So if we work together to get like their technicals and you give them, you know, props too and work more together collaboratively instead of competitively, that would help. Like, I mean, that kind of helps probably.
Actually, a month later, he was off the project.
Oh.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, that was the solve.
And
Yeah.
then sometimes people just aren't in the right positions too.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
Or it's not the right company or whatever, but.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about in, as far as like, how to prevent some of these things and, or just like if that is a feeling, like why would I feel like that, or yeah, I think in general, like inviting others in and like keeping that curiosity for how we solve this stuff is good.
I think often about the bias we all have towards the things we help create and how to leverage that as we conduct our UX work, and who are the people that need to be bought in the long run, and including them early and often. And then leveraging that bias that they'll develop because they were involved in crafting the solutions. And I think that's something always on the forefront of my mind. And I'll even recommend to clients and say, you know, if I'm asked like, well, who should we include? And I'm like, well, who do you need to have buy-in on? Who's going to write checks? Who's going to, you know, who's going to be implementing and all of that? And I even share what I just shared, that, you know, including them, yes, it's part of helping to solve the problem, but it's on a very strategic level or technical, however you want to define it. It's helping to ensure their buy-in in the long run around whatever the solution is, because they'll help to make it. Because we all have that bias towards the things we help to create.
Really good
Yes, so. And then when clients hear this, they're like, all right, stakeholder list.
I think that to go off of that, also the power of having many different people touch that like research or continuous validation piece helps us, because if the findings from a session that you were not in might disagree with you, that could be really good conflict. Like there can be some learning there. And I think like if we can reduce change blindness, that would be good that would be worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, leveraging bias.
Yeah.
In our process.
Yeah.
Or in one way or another.
Sure. Yeah, because it's there whether we want to admit it or not.
Yeah, that's true. And
Yeah.
inviting, challenge this. You weren't a part of this workshop or whatever, but take a look and challenge, where can you challenge it? right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, everyone. I want to be mindful of time. We're at 2 minutes till. I'm gonna get off of Zoom. Okay, great. And that's happening for them too. Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
Move to this, the cameras over there.
Bye.